Hello everybody, this is Amiga Rob here. I hadn't really been intending to do videos with myself clearly in vision showing my face, but today I decided I was going to make a video that I've thought about making for a while and not really had the channel to do it maybe, or I've put it off because I didn't think it would potentially be good for my career to be bad-mouthing or be seen to be bad-mouthing a big company, but I think this company is so big and they just have such a big image that I think is false, and I think they've hurt the British computer industry, the British IT industry with their practices. It's probably irrelevant. I don't think many people are going to not recruit me because I say something bad about this company, because I think some people have suspicions but they're not really aware of some of the things they do. So the video is, with no further ado, about my experience of working for Apple Computers. Now, I say working for Apple Computers because, as it happens, I never actually officially worked for Apple Computers. So maybe it's more accurate to say it should be my experience of Apple Computers having the benefit of my labour. And I'm not even 100% sure what my official title was. I think Apple Specialist, something like that. The short story was that if you called Apple to buy a computer or potentially ask questions about a computer or any of their devices, iPhone and all the other things they do, to the UK number or from the Arab Emirates, there was a fair chance you might speak to me or somebody that was working with my same working arrangement. I would say from the outset it's probably financially the worst arrangement I've ever had to work in, and the only reason I took this job is because I needed the money really badly, and it was very obvious to me quite quickly into getting involved with this that there were lots of other people that needed the money really badly. Not necessarily because of any major debt or anything, just because I'd been out of work for a bit and it was quite difficult. Bills have been... I was living a bit hand to mouth, so I just needed money coming in, and at the end of the day, it's better than... I think I'd been on the dole for about... I've been putting off going on the dole, but I think I'd been on the dole for about 2 months when I got this work. So to explain a little bit more, I did not work directly for Apple. There were two layers between me and Apple. There was an intermediary company who had effectively won a contract to supply service people to Apple, and that company operates in London. They're on Tottenham Court Road, their head office, or their UK branch. They also had another contract to deliver US service, I think, and support, or after sales service and support, I should say. And we had two contracts, I think, the guys I was working for UK sales and UK after sales service. And they didn't recruit me directly. They required me to have a limited company, which they then gave the work to effectively. So they're doing a contract with my company, and then I work for my company. So I'm effectively my own company's employee, which is the way that you sometimes see. They sometimes call that an umbrella arrangement, and you'll find people who are contracting for very good money working that way. Sometimes it used to be quite good, a fairly good way to slightly circumnavigate some tax. You wouldn't avoid tax necessarily, you manage the tax that way. And I know people in the IT industry and a few other industries that have used that in the past, but now it's very difficult to make that work because there's been a few changes in the system, so it doesn't really pay anymore. But the reason that I believe that the arrangement was like this is because the intermediary company had sold the services to Apple on the basis that they could provide it cheaper with UK staff. This is just supposition for me, if that's the right word. they could provide UK staff, they could provide UK-based service, but this way they could do it for cheaper. And the reason it's cheaper is because with this arrangement, strictly speaking, in the short term at least, there's no requirement for Apple or the intermediary company to pay any of the usual things you need to pay when you employ someone directly in the UK. For example, national insurance contributions. So during my whole period of working for them, and it was only, let me think, started training on back end of July of 2016, and contract ended, I think, on 31st of March this year. So it wasn't a long time, but during that period of time, there was no requirement for Apple or anyone to pay my national insurance. That liability falls to me if I need to pay it. Also, of course, then you don't have to do any other employer contributions like pensions or anything like that. And strictly speaking, because it's a contract between myself and the intermediary company, and I setting my own pay effectively, they don't need to actually pay a minimum, what you would equate to a normal rate of pay if you're employed directly. So my actual contracted rate was £7.20, which was the minimum pay. But and then there was also potential to get bonuses depending on what you sell, because there is performance-related pay in this arrangement, or there was performance-related pay in this arrangement. So you just from the outset to tell you, when you're calling up Apple, just in case you thought it was a matter of the people during the period I was working for them, if you called me, I don't like selling for selling sakes. And although they tell us it was not a high-pressure selling environment, your job and ongoing employment depended, first of all, on selling stuff and any bonuses you got, which was a small bonus. I mean, it worked out, I think, about £1.50 maybe at most per hour if you hit all the targets with flying colours, and there was a few targets to hit. And it was very easy not to hit them, but I'll get on to that. So where was I? So yeah, there was no obligations. There's no holiday obligations. So you're below. If you're not getting holiday entitlements, then being paid £7.20 means you are below the lowest, the minimum threshold. Because when you factor in pro rata in holiday entitlements, well, you're entitled. That's part of that £7.20. So comparable, you're probably getting paid £6.40. And then the other part of this arrangement is that you're not working on an Apple premises. You're working from home in your home office. So you're paying all of your own costs in terms of heating, electricity, keeping your office going and everything. So that's another cost. So that you're below the threshold again. And there's no supplement in that arrangement so Apple say, well, we're going to cover some of your office costs. No, they're saving money. Another saving, they don't have an office to run. They don't have to have cleaners. They don't have to pay rent. They don't have to pay ground rent. They don't have to have renewals. They don't have to own the property. They don't have to pay for internet connections going in and out. They don't have to pay any of that. They've got none of those costs. They all go onto the employee. So these are all quite considerable things that are coming off of your bottom line that you wouldn't normally, in a normal arrangement, have to pay. So this is where the saving comes, but they've got UK staff, UK-based staff, and that is the value of that at present in the service industries is really high, because there has been a big backlash from the public against that over the years, and it's normally a premium thing. So that's why Apple must have been attracted to that deal between the intermediary company and Apple. Fine. And there were other companies working on similar arrangements, from what I understand, that were taking part of the service. The part of the requirement that Apple had. So they were competing against each other. So, of course, you can't just go in cold into Apple. They can't recruit you one week and then the next week you're working for them. So what happens is, and plus you're working from home. Now, you might think, oh, well, what they probably did, Amiga Rob, is that they took you and they flew you off to their centre in Ireland, and they trained you, they put you up in a hotel and they trained you for whatever periods that you were 100% ready to deal with things the Apple way. Just like they do the people in the stores, who, if you talk to the people at the stores, they're all quite happy. I rarely come across an unhappy person at the Apple stores where they meet people unmonitored face to face. And well, anyway, you'd be wrong. That's not how it works. How it works is this: you have to, or how it works, I should say, you have to first of all pay for the entitlement to have the work opportunity. It'll only ever be called a work opportunity, although I think it was changed late in the day when I think there was some legislation changes at government level and they reworded it slightly. But yeah, it's for that work opportunity, you have to pay first of all. I think it cost £50. I think it cost me to be entered onto that, and then you have to pay for your CRB check, criminal record background check. Yeah, that's CRB check, which is £25. That's another cost you've got. You then have a period of, I think it's 6 weeks, where you were trained from home in a group with other people that have gone through the system. You have to do some qualifying tests, which are not too difficult. There's a phone call you make and you answer some questions. It's pre-recorded sort of thing, and then they judge it and then they put you through. So you have a 6-week period where the intermediate company have someone who is trained up for Apple, who does on a video conference type thing. You're in there. I think there was about 25 people in my group, and it's 6 weeks for which you are not paid. 4 hours a day is the training. I think I did it in the morning, 4 hours, and then there's tasks that you have to do afterwards. I'll be honest with you, it's a full-time job, some of these tasks, and the only reason I got through it is because I had a good group that I was working with, made some friends quite quickly, and we worked really closely and churned through it really quick. But you couldn't do another job and do that training, and I think a couple of people dropped out because they didn't realise it was going to be so much. I think there were some people who was like, oh, well, this would be good for extra Christmas money. They hadn't quite realised that it was going to be such a massive endeavour. If you're not getting paid for the training, you know, it's a lot to ask. It's a lot, particularly when none of these people were particularly stupid. Some of them, I couldn't quite figure out how they got through, but they went through and they did really well. You know, in terms you could see on the figures they were doing all right. But anyway, I'll get on to that. Most people dropped out in the end. So you enter into this, you've got the 6 weeks of training. What you do get is the promise that when you complete, you get paid a certain amount. I think it's about £100, and then once you've been there for a month or 2 months, I think you get paid another £100. So it's something like a £200 bonus. However, in order to do the training, you have to have an Apple Mac. Now, they have an arrangement where they can supply you an Apple Mac and rent it to you, and the cost isn't prohibitive. And part of the arrangement is if you earn or you work a certain number of hours by the Christmas, I think it was then, or by the end of the year, then you would automatically qualify to own the Mac. And as it worked out, I did own the Mac at the end. I didn't do enough hours. I don't think through the whole well, I didn't do enough hours, but I said, look, I'm only a few hours short. Can I have the Mac, please? And they just let me have it. So that was nice of the intermediary company. They just wrote off the about 15 or 20 quid or something. It wasn't a huge amount left, but it was nice of them. But you have to own that Mac. They let you use your own Mac if you've got one, but the specification, I would say, I think it had to be a minimum i7. I don't think it was even an i5. I could be wrong. It might have been i5 minimum, but it was a mid to high range Mac. So if you haven't got a mid to high range Mac, you have to buy a Mac from them in some way. So if I recall, I think at the time So what they send you is the lowest spec Mac. So it sort of makes a mockery. So they send you a Mac Mini. No, don't worry about getting a laptop here. You get a Mac Mini, lowest spec, the 1.4 gig, dual core, 4 threads, 4 gigs of memory, and really you do need 8 gigs on that to run smoothly. If you're facing customers without getting the hangs, you really need 8 gigs. It doesn't. Memory usage is fairly efficient, but you get hangs. But they send you the lowest spec Mac that they can send you, the lowest. And I think the charge, I think it was about £325. Well, the retail price is £399. So they're still making money on that. They're still getting a markup. So, because there's no retailer involved, cost of delivery, I suppose, but somebody's getting a markup there. Somebody's making money on that. For you to have the privilege to work on their system. Fine. So we've all got low spec Macs, apart from a few who already own Macs, and they're going through it. And you do 6 weeks of training, which are quite difficult. The training was very good. I think she had a very hard job, but she was very good, incredibly patient, because those things can go on and on and on, and people can ask really annoying questions, and people like me can be a little bit flippant about things sometimes and wind people up and all the rest of it. But it was really good. I unfortunately had a bereavement right at the time when I was due to certify, and they were quite flexible with me, which was nice because I didn't have to do that, because it wasn't that kind of arrangement. But they were a little bit flexible with me and let me score low on a few tests because I wasn't really with it, and I really struggled to get going. But at the end of the 6 weeks, I just about scraped through and qualified. And this was then the next concern started, which was, am I going to get hours? And I started to feel a little bit concerned about this because I was asking, is there going to be time? Because this is how it works. They have a system where every week, I think it was on a Thursday, about 5 o'clock, they start releasing the next week's work, or a couple of weeks down the line's work. And you have to go to a screen and click the hours you want, and then put in for them. Now, the problem is, everybody's there at whatever time. Click in. So, the first week the hours came up, I got about 2 hours. You do a couple of a week maybe, or a couple of weeks where you're taking calls in the class and they're monitoring you and trying to get you up to speed. Unpaid, or do we get paid for that? Might have got paid for that work. I think we might have got paid for that little bit of work, but after that you've got no guaranteed hours. So you're 6 weeks in here, and you're trying to get hours to work, and you can't do it. And on top of that, there's 3 tiers. This is all the intermediary thing, I should say. This isn't Apple. This is the intermediary. But you've got 3 tiers. The super good guys who are hitting all their targets, they're in the top tier. Middle ones are doing all right. They're in this middle tier. So the top ones, 5 o'clock, they go in. They get the first pick of the hours. The middle ones, I think it's 6 o'clock. If you're dog shit, 7 o'clock. You ain't getting nothing there, or you're getting scraps, The hours of work, I think, were between about 7 and 10 p.m, I think. So I was asking, and the trainer was saying, there's going to be tons of hours. You will not be able to deal with the amount of hours. You can get all the work you want. I thought, okay, I'll believe it when I see it. I never saw that. Even in the week before Christmas, there was hours, but there weren't a huge amount of hours. You couldn't get booked, and unfortunately it was so easy to end up in that bottom tier. You were just picking up scraps. So for the first couple of weeks, I hardly got any work at all. I think I got about 8 hours maybe. So you've worked for 6 weeks to train and get certified as an Apple certified person, and you're basically lucky if you're going to get the bonus rate. And because you're not meeting the hours, because they've got a minimum requirement of you working 16 hours a week, there's always a danger that you're going to slip into the next group. And I had to, because you're not working those hours is one of your targets. So I was sending emails to people saying, I hope I'm not going to get dropped into the bottom group, or I'm going to lose any, prestige here, because I just can't book the hours. The hours weren't there. And part of the reason that problem was there is because so many people were getting recruited. They were pushing for more and more people to join. And there's too many people. But they've got no cost for recruiting people. They could have 300 people and only hours for 50 people, but they don't care, because there's no cost to them for having the people on the roster. It's just flexibility for them. So of course the intermediary is going to over advertise the hours and say this is a great opportunity. They couldn't care less. They're making money either way. It doesn't matter whether they got 300 people. In fact, they make more money because you're having to pay them £10 or something every couple of weeks to be on their roster of people. So yeah, this is all working great for them, but I've got no hours. So you end up sitting there trying to figure out how to get these hours, and it's a struggle. Now, as it happened, I think I was lucky that I didn't get many hours in that first couple of weeks, because Apple that week announced something called the iPhone 7, and they also announced a few other products. And now we get into how the performance measurement works. Your KPIs. I don't think they called them that, but you had to, I think the minimum rate you had to sell in all your phone calls was 8%. They wanted you to sell 8%. And so in any, out of 100 phone calls, they'd want 8 of those phone calls to be sales of some kind. And then the value of the sale needed to be up so many £100. Average value need to be so many £100 to be meeting your contractual requirement. And they had a system whereby if you missed that target 3 times, you're gone. Or 4 times it might. I think you got 3 lives, and then the 4th time they can just get rid of you. They can get rid of you at any point. But so in that first month, Apple announced the new iPhone 7, and they shut down the store when they do that. I don't know if you know, but when you go to the website on the day that Apple are announcing a new product, they switch it all off. But you're still taking phone calls. In fact, you're taking more phone calls because everybody wants to know, what's the new product going to be? We don't know anything. The first that the people that are working for Apple know is when Tim Cook stands up there and, walks around, flapping his hands around and says, this is what we're doing. And you could, if you got caught out with that, you're in real trouble. Your employment is in danger, because it means that a load of people suddenly caught hundreds of phone calls and were not able to make a single sale. And when it was pointed out to the powers that be, well, hang on a minute, that isn't fair, they didn't really care. The next time around it happened, they said they made a slight adjustment in the figures, but you can't count for that. So there was one guy that worked with me who was a really nice guy. He worked really hard and he booked up as many hours as he could. He got tons of hours. And at the end of his first month of working for them, they got rid of him because he didn't meet his targets. He was selling stuff, but that day when the whole system was down, the website was down, everything was down, he couldn't sell anything, and he took call after call after call. Because what can you do for people? What can you do for people who are calling up and you can't sell them anything? They're not going to hang around on the phone. They goes on your figure, goes on your figure, goes on your figure. Your average comes down, down, down. So not only are you getting cheated out your bonuses, but you're getting cheated out of your job at the end of the day. Oh, it's not your job, you're just working. As far as Apple are concerned, it's not a problem. As far as the intermediary is concerned, you've not met your targets. And it's a private working arrangement. So unless you're going to go, to the civil courts, you're not going to get anything back out of them. So this guy that had worked for 6 weeks training, he got about, 30 hours of work, and then they just booted him. And I only scraped through by the, skin of my teeth. What they did was, When you started that first month, they gave you a 1-month contract. And then after that month of work, they then gave you a 3-month contract. So when it came to renewing that and giving him that 3-month, they just didn't give it. And I just scraped through by the skin of my teeth. First 2 calls I took, I had sales for Apple. And I thought, wow, this is easy. This is great. And then I did not get a sale for call after call after call. But plenty of people just dropped out that way. Just dropped out. But it didn't matter. I mean, most of the people I worked with weren't working there really by Christmas. That's only 4 months down the line. I'd say they weren't working there. I'd say there was probably only maybe 7 or 8 of the people out of the 25 that were still there a month or 2 down the line. Just because it was so difficult to make the targets, Apple would announce something. A great example being the AirPods, which they announced, and clearly the product was not ready in any way because they announced it. We took thousands of calls about it, and they didn't have any stock. And you're the week before Christmas, and people are calling about it, and there's like one here, one there, one there. I was saying to people, look, the earliest I can get you this, if you want to give it for a Valentine's present, this is the week before Christmas, if you want to give it as which is when it came in, and there was like we could see the stock, one store, two, you know, you're saying to people, if you walk there, you might walk in and get it, but I can't sell you it. They aren't going on my figures. I'm not going to get my bonuses, which are what change it from being a below minimum wage job to maybe just a little bit below minimum wage or just a bit above. You can't do any of that. And I'm saying to people, it'll be a good Valentine's present, thinking I might be able to get an order that way. You're trying everything you can to scrape through. All for the sake of this company that are the most profitable company on the face of this planet. This is the company that don't want to pay their national insurance for their employees. This is the company that are telling us that they're, about people. They're the company that have got people committing suicide in their factories. They're subcontracted factories all the time. There seems to be a problem, but they don't care about it. Then they go up, and I'm sorry, one thing that bothered me in particular is actually not even about Apple. When I was working for these people, I explained to a few people what my arrangement was, and some of these people that were traditional, I don't want to get overly political, but some of these people were very proud Labour supporting people who really, talk about workers' rights. But hang on a minute, talk about their precious Apple and iPhone, because their iPhone, how many of these people have got iPhones? Well, you know what the arrangement was when you got in. What are you complaining about? I couldn't understand how people could not understand who claim to be socialists, claim to be Labour, or claim to be concerned about, or Lib Dem or whatever, claim to be concerned about workers' rights. I wouldn't expect it from Conservatives either, to be honest, because it's hypocrisy to be, it's easy to talk about workers' rights and all the rest of it, but as soon as it affects that, well, that's my iPhone. My iPhone's my life. I can't. It's like it's my arm. Well, what's your problem? Suddenly, this ridiculous brand loyalty comes out. How Apple have crafted this brand loyalty, I do not know, because their products do not deserve it, by the way. They put out these shoddy cables, and this is my opinion, so Apple lawyers, if you're watching this and trying to find out things... Oh, by the way, I think at some point I may possibly have had something presented to me that I signed that was sort of like an NDA. And at one point, I think I was a bit anxious about making this video because I was worried that what I signed may be construed to restrict me from saying where my labour went. But then I thought, no, this is Britain, this is England, under English law, I can talk about this, you can't restrict me from saying it. So I continue. So if you're there, Apple lawyers, hope you've had a good Christmas, because I'm assuming that you'd at least watch this after Christmas. I haven't got bugger all, so if you want to sue me, sue me. All you're going to do is make my video actually get seen by people. At the minute, I expect nobody will see it. I've got about 2 views on my videos, but I want to make this video. So if you're gonna try and intimidate me, go ahead and do it, because all that'll do is piss me off and give me a better chance of making this go around. So you can't win. So feel free. If you want to destroy me, destroy me. I'm already destroyed. I'm a wreck of a human being. That's how I ended up working for you in the first place. So take your choice. That's a little bit confrontational, and I don't like to be like that, but I don't like the company, and I think in Britain we had an IT industry. We had IT companies that produced hardware, and companies like Apple have made it so that there is no competition anymore. Apple and Microsoft both have that, and Apple in particular have this kind of the kind company, the alternative to Microsoft, and they're just as bad as Microsoft, if not worse, in my opinion. Anyway, I went slightly off the point there. So working for Apple became a weekly grind of thinking, will I make the targets this week? Am I gonna? Oh, am I life down this week? Oh, am I life down this week? Am I gonna scrape through and get a new contract? Somehow I managed. I missed the targets, but somehow I don't know whether they didn't add up the figures right. In fact, I even got. This is absolute truth. I think it was after the first renewal, I got sent an email telling me. So this is just before Christmas. This was a nice Christmas present. I got an email saying, unfortunately, we're not going to require quite as many people. So they knew anyway that they were going to be getting rid of. They knew they'd over-recruited. We don't need quite as many people on the roster. So we're going to have to, the hours are going to be reduced a bit after Christmas. So we need to get rid of some people. So we need to get rid of you, Amiga Rob. I wasn't called Amiga Rob on there, obviously, but they said, we need to get rid of you, Amiga Rob. And we're really sorry about that. So I thought, great, I've been completely and utterly stuffed. That's brilliant. And I think I wrote an email direct to Tim Cook. I had an Apple email address, and I thought, well, I'll get to him. So I wrote one direct to him and just said, well, you don't live, you give it all the mouth, but you're an absolute cowboy. And I should have the email somewhere. I'll dig it out. So I gave him a load of grief and said, you're a bit duplicitous and all the rest of it. And then I was fully of in the thinking that I should say I've come in from the cold and I've still got my coat on. That's how straight into this video I went, because I knew I wouldn't do it otherwise. So I was of the mindset I was not going to be doing any more work for them. And then curiously, they sent me through a contract, and I think they did it in error, so I signed it. And then I carried on working for him. So I got another 3 months of work out of that before the actual whole contract was terminated, which happened at the end of March. But yeah, every week was a matter of, am I going to make the figures this week? Am I going to make the figures this week? Am I going to get through? Am I going to get through? And I mean, I remember there was one week I came up, they used to have, the intermediary company had heroes and villains, and they send you a thing through, and if not heroes and villains, didn't say heroes and villains, I called it heroes and villains, but it was like this week's heroes or something like that. And I was getting on the list quite a lot. And one week I was on the list, but I then also got an emailed warning that I hadn't met my target. Or a particular target, but I was on the list for meeting that target. So I got back to the intermediary and said, well, how can I be a hero yet is that surely not unreasonable? And it was a big, long, prolonged wangle over it, and I think I probably did enough talking so that they sort of pushed me through for the next week, didn't sack me, and I limped right through to the end. But yeah, when you're calling us up, our jobs depended on selling you stuff. If I'm at the end of the week, and I'm, on principle, I would not sell people stuff just to keep my job, because I genuinely don't, I will never treat customers that way. I would not want to be treated like myself, and I can tell when I'm being treated like that. So it was really pot luck if I would get sales or not. And I would give the best service I could, and sometimes people would buy stuff off of me. And if I thought someone was jumping into something, I would say to them, I think you should go to the shop and have a look at this, because I don't think you really know what you want, and it's a lot of money. So go and do that. Go and do that. Go to the shop and have a chat with them. Have a look at the stuff. Pick it up in your hand. I should have been able to do that without worrying about my job. If Apple worked the way they claim to, if they were more concerned about me giving you service and telling you what suits you best and helping you the best I possibly can, with my experience of working with computers for 20 odd years and working in retail and understanding what customers are looking for, I should be able to talk to a customer and not have the pressure of thinking, but I've got to sell them something. Because this is Apple. It's not Curry's. It's not Dixon's. It's Apple, who have this whole brand of things that are supposed to fit you, who charge premium rates for their products, who charge, all kinds of money for their products, and make strange decisions as well. I mean, that was the other one that hit me during the time there. They released the revised MacBook Pro, which they ditched all the USB A connectors on. The standard USB connectors, and switched to the USB-C style. And then I've worked in video and done music stuff and used computers for all different kinds of things, and in a professional capacity. And I've got professional people who would talk to me saying, I work in video, I don't understand why you've removed the memory card slot, because I need that and I don't want a dongle on the side. And I could only say to them, I completely understand that. I'm 100% with you. I can't lie to him. There's no way I can say to him, yeah, removing that memory card slot makes a lot of sense, because it made no sense to me. The first thing I thought when I saw it was, wow, they've really cost reduced and taken a lot of features away from a premium product. How much is it going to hurt to have one standard USB connector on it? How much is it going to hurt to keep that card slot, which is a minimum profile slot that you don't need to make compromises for? You don't. No matter what they say, it's a minimum amount of logic. It's a cheap as chips component. There's reasons they could argue they don't do it on the phones, for to have robust systems. It's because they want to charge premium rates for the higher capacities. That's why they don't have card slots on the phones. But for the computers, and particularly the Pro line, MacBook Pro, you had to have a card slot. You had to. Pros don't want to use dongles. They haven't got a clue. I mean, they have no idea what they're designing. Whoever said, oh, it's a brave new whatever, you might have thought it was brave removing floppy disks, and I still think that was a bit of a mistake, removing the floppy disk at the time they did, at a time when the brand was still very shaky and the whole company was shaky. That was a bit too much. Optionally remove them. Fine. Don't forcibly remove them. A card slot and just one USB on the old format, that isn't a design compromise. It isn't a huge floppy disk that requires power, is a mechanical item that you have to build the whole thing around. You don't need any of that. That was about selling bits of crap to people and compromising on the usability of the machine. But I've got to sell that. Now, I understand their customers better than they do. And I'm getting paid below minimum rate. I'm worrying about whether I'm going to have a job the next week. I'm struggling to book hours. I never booked that many. Even at Christmas, I never got that many hours. Never enough to be a full-time job, although it was never advertised as a full-time job. It was always supplementary income, but for a lot of people, it was their main income stream. They didn't understand their machines, and it was obvious. If you don't have a desktop pro machine, no desktop pro machine that's really up to it. PC owners are buying hardware which is comparable and better for less money. And Apple, a thing that looks nice, yeah, great. It looks really interesting, and got a Hoover thing that comes out in the middle and everything. But I've got pros saying to me, I need a desktop machine that's just a desktop. I don't care about all the other stuff. I need it to have this much power. I need to be able to plug these kind of graphics cards in, blah, blah. Apple didn't support it. And I was covering those people. I was also supporting people from the United Arab Emirates. Now, one thing that Apple might not... maybe they won't be happy for me to disclose is that something I brought it up and I never got a response, but in the training materials, Apple explicitly have a section about dealing with calls from United Arab Emirates and people who do not wish to be served by females. And they sort of tell you, the wording in the document sort of tells you not to take offence if you're a female. And now this never happened to me. But I did have a colleague that thought they were not getting much out of some of the UAE customers, a female colleague. But there is instructions. If they do not wish to be served by a female, don't take offence, just pass it on to a male colleague. And I thought, well, is that compliant with the law in the UK? Because for one thing, you're losing out on your bonuses because you're taking a call that goes on your figures. Are they going to deduct that from there? Don't know. But should a UK employer be supporting that? Should someone working in the UK have to put up with that? Isn't that discrimination in the workplace? Should the employer be saying, no, we'll support you if the customer does not want to be served by a female, then because these are the laws in this country, then we can't serve them. In that case, maybe you just can't serve the UAE customers and you have to have the service going there. I don't know, it's tricky because you don't want to turn down the business. If it provides employment for people in the UK, then in theory, and people that want to speak to English, because I think we were taking people who wanted to speak to English speakers from the UAE. I think there might have been other languages available to the UAE, but never comfortable with that. And the fact it was written in the training things like, don't take offence that you're... Well, I think I can decide whether I'm going to take offence at that. I think I can decide for myself, thank you, Apple. And if the situation had arisen, I wouldn't have dealt with one of those calls because I personally do not think it is acceptable for somebody working in the UK to be discriminated against because of their sex or their gender. So I wouldn't have done that. I was uneasy with that. And working in retail in the UK, it does happen. I mean, you do even see it then. There are people that don't want to deal with women, people from all kinds of backgrounds that don't want to deal with women and will... The typical thing where you get a female manager and you will get some people that won't be happy until they're speaking to a male, whoever it is, even if it's the lowest ranked member of staff, they would rather be speaking to a male. And that happens, but you, to be explicitly told not to take offence, wasn't comfortable with that. Anyway, I'm slightly digressing. There were tons and tons and tons of things that bothered me about this arrangement, but ultimately it was unfair on the employees, and maybe that's why it ended, because we were told, I think towards the beginning of March this year, that Apple were ending the contract. We wouldn't have our contracts renewed at the end of March. Nobody would. The intermediary was losing the contract, and I think the work moved to Japan. I could be wrong. I don't want to speak out of turn. I think the work moved to Japan. So for that 6 weeks of training, for all that stress of working, first of all trying to get in and get the hours, and I mean I had some weeks where I had 4 hours, 2 hours, that kind of thing. Half an hour here, half an hour there. Even during the Christmas weeks, I think the most I worked, I did have a few weeks where I worked a lot of hours, but you then started to look at the hours and thinking, are these the kind of hours of the day where anybody's going to actually buy anything? But yeah, I think, it earned me a few £1,000s over 7 months, just enough to keep me going. I should say as well, actually, the only reason I kept afloat during that time was, as I said, I'd never taken the dole before, and I have been pretty skint in the part at times and had bad runs getting with employment, which has put me in financial bother every now and then. But to be claimed the dole, I was in a real spot of bother. And at one point, somebody said to me, "Oh, there is because I was saying when I started the job, and I was doing whatever I needed to do to come off the dole, I said, when do I actually stop claiming? Because I think there's going to be a bit of a lag, and I'm a bit worried that it doesn't work out, or I don't have, the money drops." And they said to me, there is a scheme where people working as an independent business can get some funding. This will probably be the first and only time I will get funding. So I looked at it and I managed to put together a meeting with a guy, and then meeting with the guy. It took a bit of messing around, but I got a meeting with the people that do this funding, and it was a government funded thing with one of these social sector companies managing it. And normally these things, what you'd have to do is make an independent business plan, and it would take months and months and months to do it for people that probably hadn't really worked for a long time. And I just went straight in and went, "There's my business plan." And they went, "Oh, it's not quite what we want." I said, "Right, what do I need to have on it?" And they went, "Well, we'll shape it over." I was like, "Don't have time for that. I'm starting working next Wednesday." And they said, "Oh, well, I don't think I can't not get this money. I need this. How much is it worth?" And it was worth $1,500, I think. So what I actually had, and this is the only way, because I could not have afforded to have done this job. This is how bad it was, the pay and the rate I was getting. I managed to put through I'm easily the shortest time anyone's ever done this funding. I had to put together this business plan, get it signed off before I actually started earning at the end of the training. And I was then getting a supplementary amount for the first few months. I think it was about £64 a week. So I think the dole was about £73 a week. So that was really good, actually. And but then I was earning, I think the first week I earned about £24 off of Apple, and then the £64. So I was effectively Apple. My labour for Apple for the first period was being subsidised by the government. And I couldn't have done it otherwise. Couldn't have done it. I was working for the most profitable company in the world, and the government was, the state was topping up the income, so I could work for them. It was I think it was something like £64 a week for the first couple of months, and then it went to £32 a week. Something like that. But it came in very handy, and I think including that, during the whole contract, I only made a few £1,000s, and I just crept through until the contract ended, and I was in a bit better shape. I had a couple of things worked out, but that was it, And look, if you go out and you spend thousands of pounds on Apple equipment, you're entitled to do that. We live in a country where you can make, and we live largely in a world where you have that freedom of choice. But don't do it. In my opinion, they are not a company that actually act like they purport to act. They don't have your interests at heart, I don't think. I think that their employees, I think where employees are visible and where they can interact with you without being closely monitored, they take care of them. Any point where they don't need, where the people pushed out the way, or they can monitor them, because my calls were all monitored. If I said the wrong thing at any point, I could be given the heave-ho. They don't treat those people right. That's what I feel. And I know people, or I've heard of people that work for them in a development capacity, and they're treated fantastically. I know I went to the stores and I started speaking to staff. Some of them were horrified when I told them what my working arrangement was. I mean, our discounts, they weren't consistent, the discounts, but they were like 10, 15%, I think, generally. They weren't nothing like the store, but they wanted the people in the store to be showing off the stuff, so they were getting 50% discounts. And I needed the flexibility, like a lot of people there. I needed the flexibility to be able to pick my hours. I needed the flexibility to be able to work from different locations. A lot of the people working there needed that. It was obvious. And there's times at your life where you need that. Be it you've got people that depend on you, that you need to have that flexibility for, or you are physically not able to do work away from home and go through the journey. That wasn't my case. I had a few things, and my situation changed during the time I was working for them, and I got a bit more flexibility. My commitments were slightly reduced, but there were a lot of people there who just good people who wanted to work hard, and they wanted to work for a company like Apple. One of the reasons I did it was because I thought it would be good on my CV. You've worked for Apple, you must be a certain standard because they've got the reputation. And I wanted to have that name on my CV, but I've got to tell you, this company do not treat people right. Some people they treat, the ones they need to, they treat all right, and they can afford to. But they weren't doing the right thing by me and my colleagues. And when we got dropped, we were lucky to get, I think it was about a month's notice. We were lucky, and a few people got fixed up with other stuff. But I think everybody there, pretty much, most people were living, I don't want to say hand to mouth, but they needed every penny they could get. And the bun fight every week of fighting for hours, the fact that if you didn't meet your targets, you didn't really have any chance of getting major hours. I think some of the people that were doing the best, getting the bonuses and everything, I think they must have been compromising. It's an assumption, it could be wrong. I think they must have been compromising on what they were giving customers in terms of service. I don't think they were giving pure service. My opinion. The other thing that bothered me was that when I was... I had an Apple email address, and I was occasionally getting emails in error. There was somebody with a similar name to mine, well, same name as mine, who I think must be quite senior. And I got a couple of emails intended for them. Maybe Apple had not been paying all the tax they should have been. They were sort of aware of it and trying to figure out how to manage it. I don't understand how a company that big wouldn't understand something very basic about tax, or think that, I don't know, say they were wondering about what they should be paying on online, like iTunes sales or something like that. I would think they should be pretty clear on what their tax situation should be, and if they're not, they should have been inquiring about it. How a company that has the volume or the sheer profit levels they have wouldn't have checked that. I don't know. I would hope that Apple aren't avoiding tax, or if they've ever made a mistake about tax, they've told people about it, and they've done the right thing and paid it back, everything they owe, because the company makes billions in profit. They're the most profitable company in the world. They've got massive cash reserves. It makes no sense to me. And at the end of the day, Apple probably should have gone in the 90s. You know, it's a shame that the Amiga went. This is a little computer thing here. For those who have stuck all the way through this, this is a little computer thing. It is a shame that Amiga went and Apple stayed, because the Amiga was a better machine, and Apple took so many... they created so many innovations that came clearly directly from the Amiga operating system and the other aspects of the Amiga. The first time I saw OS X, I thought this is basically the last versions of the Amiga operating system. You know, Magic User Interface, Magic Workbench and stuff bolted on. They've sort of cloned that. It's not really X Windows. It's Amiga architecture that they're operating system architecture that they're borrowing. They switched to a Unix style system. Blah blah blah. That bothers me a bit, but that's not why I resent them. I resent them because I worked for them. It was necessary evil. Their phones are incredibly high price. I think guys like Louis Rossmann and I can't think of the name of the lady engineer that do the live streams and take apart the Apple products are really doing a good job showing what you are actually paying for and the standards of this hardware that are premium price. I hope that people start to realize what this brand is about, and I hope that people act with their feet. But it's not going to make any difference. Apple have established their brand. In the phone market, they're dominant. I don't think the operating system is as good as people say. There's still not an operating system that can handle multitasking like Amiga did with Workbench and Amiga DOS. I still get random hangs from Windows and OS X. I do own, that's the one Mac product, Apple product I own, is still my Mac, which I do own outright. So I mean, that's it really. That was my experience. It wasn't a positive experience. It was very disappointing. I'm sure as soon as I stop this, I'll start thinking of other things. I might end up inserting bits into this video. If I needed money, I'd have to work for them again. I couldn't turn down the work even after all that. And I hope people that understand that, who purport to be on the side of workers and those who are done down, understand that sometimes you just have to work. If someone's offering you money and you ain't got money, sometimes you have to work and take whatever chance you can. And that's when there's the opportunity to be exploited. And I think companies like Apple shouldn't be exploiting people with the amount they charge for products. They shouldn't be doing that. They should not be doing that. These are not narrow profit margins. This is not a company that is on its knees. This is not a company that should be asking those giving their labour to them to make sacrifices in terms of holidays. No entitlement to holidays, no holiday pay. You're a contractor working on a 3 monthly basis at best, and at any week you can be gone. Your employment can be ended. I have great regrets about my time working for Apple, but if I needed to work for them again, I'd have to. I don't think I'm going to now. I think I've probably ever so slightly queered the pitch for me. If Apple want to be big about it, they can come to me and ask me what I think they can do to improve things, and I'd happily do that, and I'd work for them on that basis. I wouldn't sell out, but we all need money to eat, live, and all the rest of it. But I can certainly teach them how not to be evil, I hope. Anyway, that's it. Apple, the company I worked for 7, 8, 9 months, I think, made very little money, paid all of my costs, more or less, paid a tithe to just be on the roster to work for them, about 20 quid a month, I think it was. Had to buy the hardware from them, and they still made money on it, probably. Nearly got the boot because I didn't flog enough stuff to people. Stuff that wasn't available. Availability was terrible on some of their products. The phones absolutely did us in. iPhone 7, the availability was so poor. Call after call went on for months. Every week I'm thinking, oh, please don't call me asking about, I don't have any iPhone 7s. I can't sell you. I can't sell you earpods or whatever, the AirPods, whatever they're called. I can't sell you any of these things. Please don't call me. All you're doing is moving me nearer to the sack because I'm getting more calls and no sales. That was what it was. That was my experience, being stressed about people calling me up about stuff I couldn't sell them. So, thanks for watching. Really appreciate it if you've gone all the way through this. I'm just starting this channel. I don't have many views or subscribers at the minute, but I'm trying to make something where it's pretty it's going to be a bit stilted, I guess, on some videos. Some videos are going to be quite passionate like this one. Others are just going to be real mellow, maybe boring videos, and others are going to be different again, I suppose. But anyway, I might not do many more videos in Vision, so I hope you've appreciated this chance to gaze upon my tramp-like, unshaven face. Maybe you can see the dandruff hanging off of my glasses. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it. If you didn't like this, dislike. Apple lawyers. If you liked it, like. There'll probably be a subscribe thing around here somewhere. You can have a look at some of my other tedious videos. Take care. TTFN.